webpage for viewing later if you'd like to. Please ensure that you are on mute. If you're not already, please ensure that you're on mute to reduce any background noise and interference. If you have any questions for the speakers, please type them in the chat, and we do have someone who will be moderating the chat for us today. And lastly, we will be sending out a survey in the coming days, and we would really appreciate it if you would give us your feedback on today's session and our FYI sessions in general. Again, welcome and thank you for joining us. These FYI sessions are intended to inform the campus community about important financial business policies and updates. Financial services host these FYI sessions, but they often include guest speakers. Today's agenda will start with a welcome from the Associate Vice President of Financial Services, Maureen Pasag. Maureen?
Thanks, Verice. Good morning, East Bay. Welcome to our FYI Town Hall. Again, it's Finance You Included, where we engage the campus in important information and updates to the financial policies and procedures for the campus. And these forums have been of value to the campus community, so we've expanded the entire campus to be invited for all who is willing to learn about the university's fiscal and business activities and processes. So today's session is especially important as we're fast heading into our fiscal year-end close, June 30th. And what that means is we officially close the books for the fiscal and academic year, and it entails a lot of work behind the scenes by the finance team. We have a hard deadline to meet set by the Chancellor's Office and by the state of California by the second week of July. We also actually do another close, which is our GAAP close in mid to late August for the formal GAAP financial statements. And to add to all of this, we have a swarm of external auditors reviewing and auditing all of our activities and all of our transactions. So as you can imagine, it's a lot of work by the team, and we appreciate everyone's participation in this process as we rely heavily on all of you to provide accurate and timely information about your departments. So I do want to share my screen for real quick. So you see here, this is last year's fiscal year 21-22 cover of the financial statements for the CSU. And it was recently issued by the Board of Trustees, and it's posted on the CSU website. And as you can see, there's 10 campuses on the front cover, and East Bay is right smack in the middle. And what this means is we're one of the 10 campuses in submitting a timely and accurate financial package. And so a big congratulations to the financial services team, as this is no easy feat. It's a huge accomplishment, and it was led by the accounting office. And we also want to thank all of you, as this is a campus-wide effort in this effort, and we really appreciate everyone's participation in ensuring we have accurate and auditable financial records for the campus. So no pressure. We want to do this repeat again for this coming year and close. I also want to take this moment to introduce to the campus our new procurement director, Sai Vang. She recently comes from the College of the Desert in Palm Desert, and that's part of the community college system. And she recently served as their director of auxiliary services, contracts, and purchasing. So Sai.
Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here, and I will be a presenter at today's FYI. I'm very happy to be part of the CSU East Bay family now. I'm on month 2 here, and I look forward to meeting everyone if I haven't met you yet. Please also feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. But thank you so much.
Thanks, Sai. And Jonathan, let's go ahead and put up the agenda.
Thank you so very, very much, Dr. Khan. I really appreciate you being here and sharing. Thank you.
So as Verice previously mentioned, we do have a couple of,
Have a great
to
weekend.
have everybody muted. We do have a couple of guest speakers with us today. We have our Director of Financial Aid, Sonia Jethani. She'll be speaking on Learning Aligned Employment Program and the Federal Work Study process. We also have our Director of Payroll Services, Tony Tijero, and he'll be covering payroll processes and California Employee Connect. We also have our University Controller, Rabi and our Director of Procurement, Sai Vang, on our fiscal year-end information and reminders. And then lastly, Erin Ledesma, our Associate Director of Student Finance, will cover a new student payment feature called Student Dynamic Bill that we're very excited to share to the campus. So with that, I will hand this over to Sonia to get the show started.
Thank you, Maureen. Good morning, everybody. Jonathan, go ahead and share this slide, please. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share with you before I get started some links to both the programs that I'm going to be talking about. The first will be the Federal Work Study Program. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so the Federal Work Study Program is awarded to students who submit the FAFSA application. So you're a citizen, permanent resident, eligible non-citizens of the US who indicate on their FAFSA application that they're interested in federal work study. They pretty much get it, right? This is something that we receive from the federal government around this time of the year in a budget. So it's about between 700 and 800,000 every year, lower end of that. So essentially for the student, if they are interested in federal work study, they would be hired by one of you in your departments. And they will need to essentially maintain half-time enrollment and meet satisfactory academic progress. And so, next slide, please. So federal work study process actually involves so many departments, including every department who hires the student, right? So essentially from the beginning, what we do is we provide each division budget director with an allowance based on the earnings of 5 years earnings of student assistants. So essentially the average of that amount, we base that on that. And so we give you guys a percentage of the federal work study allocations to be dispersed among your divisions. Okay, so that's how we essentially maintain the budget of it. Accounting helps us in that, we reconcile every year. We actually have to report this on the FISAP application, which is something that we have to submit every year to the Federal Student Aid Department. Payroll is the one that issues the funds to students. And of course, the departments would be the ones to supervise the students as they go along. Okay, and then as well, the Career Center, ACE, helps us in posting the available jobs on campus. So if you don't know yet, and if you are wanting to hire students in the Federal Work Study Program, ACE can help in setting up your job opportunities through Handshake. Thank you, KP. Yep, through Handshake. Next slide, please. So a couple of FAQs. Will FWS pay the entire salary? No. You are responsible for 25% of the student's salary, which is still, helpful with budget and all of that. And the government will pay 75% of the funds. How do I know if an applicant is eligible for federal work study? Simple, ask them, right? So they have access to their MyCSU East Bay account. So essentially all they have to do is sign in to take a look at their financial aid package. If federal work study is part of their package, they will be able to see that there. If they are not, if they don't have federal work study in their package because they didn't indicate on their FAFSA that they are interested, but you still want to hire them, you can still have them reach out to the financial aid office to be considered. This is a need-based financial aid. And so if, we see space, which typically we can find space for the student, we award them at any point in the year, okay? Can I ask, the financial aid office for a list of federal work-study eligible students. No, that is a privacy violation. And so essentially asking us is the same way as asking us a list of students who are poor, right? So not a good idea, but this is a part of the student's package. So they should be the ones who would be able to tell you while you're onboarding them or interviewing them and all of that. Okay, how much can a student earn in federal work study during the academic year? The base amount that we award students is $3,000 per year. However, if they are stellar kids and they're able to balance work life and all of that and school and all of that, and they have exceeded or nearing the limit of the $3,000, all they have to do is, or you can do, is reach out to our financial aid federal work study coordinator and ask to have them get an increase to see if there is space in their financial aid package to get an increase in the federal work study funds. Okay, next slide. How many hours can a student work? This is actually not just a federal law, but a CSU system-wide rule for all student workers, 20 hours maximum per week. Can federal work study be used to pay the students sick leave or holidays? No, a school is not permitted to do that. No vacation pay, holiday pay, or all of that is not included in the federal work study process. Next slide. Does federal work study affect a student's eligibility for other awarded scholarship? It does not affect their eligibility for other awarded scholarships. Their cost of attendance is high enough that they have a lot of space in their package, right? Who can I contact for specific questions? You can contact me, our federal work study coordinator, or the staff if they're not available through finaid@csueastbay.edu. Next slide. So we have an employer guidance on that link that I provided that will take you step by step through the federal work study process. This is a sample form that we provide to you, to the employers, to essentially start the conversation about the student's eligibility, because there are really great students who are balancing 2 jobs at the same time on campus. And so if you have a student who has another job, you're going to have to share their budget of that $3,000, right? So you have to make sure that you are consistently communicating to your student, because another issue is that they might get a scholarship in the middle of the academic term that could adjust their eligibility in federal work study funds, which is something that Lucretia will reach out to you about, and something that the student is obligated to tell you about when they are notified by the financial aid office. Next slide, please. So just a sample of an award, right? Johnny lives on campus with a $23,000 budget, or the cost of attendance. And as you know, or hopefully you know by now, that the financial aid office or the institution cannot provide financial aid to a student in excess of their cost of attendance or their need as calculated by the FAFSA or the CADA application. So if he has been awarded up to the maximum in total aid of $23,000, including the work study funds, and then in the middle of the academic year, he gets a scholarship, essentially, we will have to either replace that scholarship with one of the loans that he received, because that would reduce his debt, or reduce his work study if he has not yet earned that much money, because a lot of students earn maybe a couple $100s a semester and all of that. So something to note here, the financial aid package is always moving. It is variable. And so the student really has to make sure that they are communicating with the supervisor when it comes to any adjustments to their aid. Okay. Next slide, please. So again, review the employer guidance if you are interested, and I'm definitely here to talk to you more or answer your questions and all of that. Reach out to your budget director to see if you are you have more funds in your budget. I know admin and finance, I'm so glad you're here. I know that you guys are underspending in federal work study. I know that there are some employers who are reluctant to hire because of all of the different, rules that they have to follow, but hey, it helps your budget, right? So again, if there's anything, any questions that you guys have for me, definitely reach out to me about them. Okay, next, slide. All right, Learning Aligned Employment Program. So this is a new program that we started piloting this semester, spring 23. We received about $700,000 for the 22-23 school year from the California Student Aid Commission for this program. And this program is going to continue. They're going to continue to give us money for the next 10 years. The amount that we receive is based on the number of Pell eligible students that we have. So essentially, the LAPE program provides funds to participating public post-secondary educational institutions to offer eligible students opportunities to earn money to help pay for their educational costs while gaining experience in their major or just areas of their interest, right? And so it doesn't have to be like the job that you offer them does not have to be according to their major. It could be another sort of industry that they might be interested in. Like, for example, we have a couple of students in this program right now who are learning about enrollment management, things about the registrar's office, admissions office, and financial aid office. Okay, next slide. So I talked a little bit about this. We received $700,000, but they actually gave us I think funding for the next 10 years, because I saw that fund in our account in the millions. So just as a heads up about that. So the way that this works is that as opposed to the federal work study program where you are responsible for 25%, the LAEP will pay 100% of the salary for these students if you hire them. The amount that they are awarded is $6,000 a year, but that's something that we can still increase. This is an institutional policy. The students have not reached that amount yet, so we're kind of making sure that we have enough for everybody to go around. So ACE is essentially looking for partnerships as well with off-campus organizations like non-profit corporations and for-profit corporations to provide more opportunities for students. Actually, this is something that I'm talking to the students about in the workshops that we're holding at the financial aid office. It is really popular, in particular with the new students who are really interested in this program. If the student is if our partnership is with a nonprofit corporation. So for example, if ACE partners up in the future with a nonprofit corporation, LAEP will pay 90%, and then the corporation will pay 10% of the salary. If the students go to UC or CSU like ours, right, they pay 100% of it. For-profit organizations have to pay 50% while they pays 50% of the salary. Okay, next slide. So before I go on, the good thing about this program for the students is that part of the contract essentially promises the students an opportunity for a job after they graduate, so that while they are in school, they're learning about the industry. We are, teaching them about, how things work with regards to whatever department you're in. And then because they have all of those skills, they will essentially be offered a job. Now, I know that this is something that will create some reluctance for departments because how can you, there might be budgetary issues. How are you going to be able to offer this student a job? Well, something to note over here is that, the student has to fulfill their obligations, right? Expectations. So part of the contract will also stipulate that they need to be good enough to fulfill that obligation. I'm actually reaching out to the organization at California Student Aid Commission right now to see if, we can also add a clause on there for budgetary constraints if the department or the organization is not able to offer the student a job based on budget, then are we obligated to still provide the student with this job? And I think the answer is no, but I'm just kind of finalizing that with the State Department to grant us, or close that loop on the reluctance from different departments. So eligibility criteria for the LAEP program is the underrepresented student. Students who are first gen, low-income students, students who are current or former foster youth, homeless students or those at risk of being homeless, students with disabilities, students who were laid off recently, students in the with dependent children, and formerly incarcerated students, undocumented students who meet AB 540 criteria. So as long as they meet that criteria, which is something that we will identify between us in the financial aid office and the Career Center for eligibility through an application process. So they need to be eligible to work in the US and meet satisfactory academic progress in order to receive this funding. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the award amount is $6,000, but again, this can increase if you are able to manage an increase. You decide the rate, the pay rate of the student. We encourage that it's above minimum wage. And so it is for the fall and spring semester. And let's see, make sure that, you know, they don't work over 20 hours a week. Okay, next slide. So the pilot program that we started at the Enrollment Information Center, our team at the first floor of the SA building, if you are not familiar, is a position or a couple of positions where we partner up with the affinity groups. I think the DISC as well as the EOP have interns right now working for them and us at the Enrollment Information Center. So the students there essentially expressed interest in working with the affinity groups in enrollment management. So they're essentially gaining experience in that way. We actually hired an SSP1A this week, actually these past couple of weeks, who started as a work study student with us. So, you know, the market, I know that I heard yesterday, the community colleges are having issues with staffing as well, because they're not getting as many applicants. So really, we have to be thinking outside of the box when we are, you know, in this hiring process, how we are going to get competent staff members. We can also, you know, you can look from within our campus to start building these students up in towards the success that we need, as well as the staffing resources that we need. Okay, next slide. Oh, I think that's it. So essentially, if you are interested, please feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you very much for that information, Sonia. If you have any questions for Sonia, if you can please type them in the chat if you haven't already done so, and we have a moderator who will read those questions.
Yeah, we do have some questions in the chat box. First question is, can we specify in handshake that we want to hire?
Probably too busy for this, but
Hello? Anyway, let me repeat that. Can we specify in handshake that we want to hire federal work study students? And Catherine Palmieri answered, you can always specify, but you need financial aid to confirm because we cannot prevent others from applying.
Kind of true, Catherine, in that you need confirmation, but you're going to need to confirm that with the student, because again, we can't share that information with you until you have actual reason to reach out to the financial aid office about student data. So the student will be telling you whether they are federal work study eligible student.
Okay, the next question is, what about funding for summer 23 for work study and summer financial aid?
Very good question. So federal work study is only for the fall and spring semester. LAEP, however, can be considered in the summer term. Just make sure that you contact us so that we can make sure that we are, you know, administering the proper reporting process for the state.
Does this also apply to grad students?
So federal work study can be offered to graduate students. In fact, they have been awarded in the past in federal work study funds. LAEP is for undergraduate students.
Okay. How can we do this, since this seems the opposite of our hiring process? And aren't we supposed to be having students doing work that is classified union?
So Danica, the student assistants are separate from federal work study students. So I'm not sure. This is something that maybe Andre, you might be able to answer with regards to this. No, you can't answer that. I don't know about union classifications, but they are not part of unions, the federal work study students or LAEP.
None of the student workers are actually part of the union. So in terms of the work, if there's a rule in regards to federal work study, you have to follow that. But most students do work that's actually bargaining unit work for the most part.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other questions in the chat. I'd like to remind everyone that Sonia provided in the chat the 2 links for the federal work study and LAEP programs.
Thank you very much. Was that all the questions for Sonia? Okay.
Yeah.
Sonia, okay, she saw it. Thank you. Our next topic are student payroll processes, student hiring, cross-campus faculty and staff payments, and the California Employee Connect from the Director of Payroll Services, Tony. Tony?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tony Tijero, Director of Payroll Services. Thank you, Maurice, and the finance team for inviting me today. I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to be here with you today on what is expected to be a nice sunny day later this afternoon, just in time for lunch. Personally, this winter has been a bit long for me, and I'm ready for some consistent warm weather, so I'm looking forward to that. But no, for the next few minutes, I won't be talking about the weather. I'll be providing you an overview about the student employment process, ways to pay staff and faculty that teach, work, or participate in events that are outside of their normal work duties here at East Bay and other campuses as well. And then I'll end with an overview of State of California's self-service portal, Cal Employee Connect. I'll be honest with you, over the last few weeks, just being around today's presenters, I learned a few things, and that's our hope for everyone here today, that you find this information informative and that you're able to take some nuggets of information with you that you may have not known before, so that you can be better prepared for this year end, and also the next time you hire a federal work study student or just a regular student employee. So as mentioned earlier, you'll have an opportunity for Q&A. So if you have questions about the information, feel free to ask away or at the end. So the student process. Wow, I just ran a report yesterday and realized that we have over 1,500 student job records or jobs that are open at this moment in time. And some are held by the same student across different departments, but I just mentioned this so that you can get an idea and perspective of how many student jobs we have open this academic year, and kind of put a relationship between student hires and then staff employment, because these kind of parallel in numbers as we stand today. So what do you need to do to hire a student, you may ask? So it all starts with the CEF. The CEF is the form that is submitted to payroll in order to hire your students. Unlike staff positions where there is a recruitment process with human resources, students hires, they don't go through the HR hiring process. It's a process between the hiring department and payroll. So it's very direct between the department and the payroll team. So the CEF contains all of the important information that payroll needs in order to hire the student and comply with the CSU requirements, which I will go in a little bit more detail. So first, the classification. Sonia talked about work study classifications, the LAEP classification or position itself, but there are others. And the most popular and most common class is our student assistant. We have student assistants, federal work study, international student assistants, non-resident tax, we have bridge students, and as well, I mentioned the LAEP classification. And each of these classifications is specific to the student's enrollment status and the job responsibilities that they will be performing. For example, our student classification, it's, again, I mentioned it earlier, it's the most common, most popular, and that's because this class is for students who are doing general office work, which may include answering phones, filing, and other clerical tasks. As Andra mentioned, although they're student classifications, they sometimes will be performing duties that are under collective bargaining agreements. We have a federal work study class. These students may be performing general office work as well, but the difference is that they're awarded financial aid dollars that they can spend down by working each semester, as Sonia has mentioned. And this is advantageous to the departments because not only, well, you're only responsible for covering 25% of the cost, and then 75% of it is through financial aid. So it helps out the departments in terms of budget reasons. We have our instructional student assistants, and this group of students is mostly in the academic areas. These students are, may believe it or not, it was mentioned earlier that some are not represented employees, but this is the only group. Our instructional student assistants are represented, and these students are mostly performing grading, tutoring, or instruction in the academic departments. We also have our bridge student classification, and this class is used specifically when students are not enrolled in courses or they drop below half-time, and half-time being 4 units, less than 4 units for our graduate students and 6 units for undergrads. So anytime they drop below those unit loads, then they will fall under the bridge classification. And position numbers. It's another important thing that you're going to need to complete the CEIF. And this is important because position numbers are unique to each department and the classification that you're hiring your student. This ensures that student salaries are drawn from the correct funds and accounts, and that you're not, if you assign the incorrect position number, then you could potentially be drawing funds from the wrong account. So this is important. We run into incorrect position numbers often. If departments don't know their position numbers for their department IDs and each classification, they can easily reach out to our payroll techs, myself, or the FSU team, the financial support unit. Another important piece that's going to be needed is the class enrollment schedule with the unit load or the number of units that each student is enrolled in. And again, this is important because students can qualify for a FICA tax exemption, meaning that if they're enrolled in half-time or more, they are exempt from Social Security and Medicare taxes. Whenever they drop below below half-time, then they're subject to FICA tax, which requires different reporting on the payroll side. So again, that's another important piece that's going to be needed on the CEIF. Next slide, please. So effective dates. We get this question often. So what effective dates should we use? And it's not to be funny, but the effective date is when the student hire it actually starts. We don't want to see an effective date of August 1st if the student's not going to start on the job until August 15th. So we want to see the effective date should represent the true date that a student hire will begin. Some departments will bring students in prior to the first day of actual work to do some training. So they call it their paid training. And that's fine. If you're going to pay a student for training, then use that date, the first date of training. Again, what we don't want to see is a start date where a student doesn't really start on that date. And then in terms of end dates, by default, a student's appointment end date is set to end at the end of the May pay period, which is the last pay period of the academic year. However, if you have a student that's no longer working for your department that you hired in the fall, we don't want you to keep that student active until the end of May. If they're they finished their assignment or for whatever reason they decided to quit the position in January, we need you to submit and want you to submit a CEIF with an action to end that appointment so that the student record is not lingering as an active job record out there when the student is no longer reporting time. So that's the CEIF. Once the CEIF is completed, it goes to payroll. You send it over to your payroll tech that's assigned to your department. And then from there, you want to send your student over and have them visit HR and payroll so that they can complete their onboarding requirements. This is to establish who they are, employment eligibility, and other requirements as well. And then once this is all done, the student can begin work. So that once the CEIF is received by payroll, the student has completed the onboarding requirements, then they're good to go, start working, and start reporting time. Some of the things that you want to look out for and be prepared to do once you hire a student is to monitor their work hours. Sonia mentioned a lot of the things that I'm talking about as well with respect to the number of hours that students are limited to work per week. Again, you don't want to schedule students to work beyond 20 hours a week. That's the threshold, 20 hours per week. And it's for multiple departments. If you have a student that works in the library or in HR, those two departments need to communicate as well as the student to make us aware they have multiple positions on campus, because again, we do not want to exceed the 20-hour per week rule. Keep in mind that if your student is scheduled to work 4 hours, at a minimum 4 hours, or for every 4 hours, you need to provide them with a 15-minute break. If you schedule a student 6 or more hours, then at that time, they're entitled to a 30-minute lunch. It's unpaid, but you still have to provide that 30-minute lunch. So reviewing those hours is important, again, because what happens is if a student reports time that exceeds 20 hours in a work week, we still have to pay that. But what the system will do is generate an exception, and department supervisors or managers need to review these exceptions prior to approving time so that we have a clean timesheet that comes over to the payroll in order to process the employee's time and have that time transmitted to the state controller's office for payment. So along with approving work hours, there's also that responsibility of reviewing exceptions and for these timesheets. Some of the other exceptions will include if you have scheduled an employee to work 6 or more hours and they didn't clock out for a break. So these kind of things need to be reviewed before time is approved and before those work hours are submitted over to payroll. Next slide. So payments for employees who work in additional assignments outside of their normal duties. I want to talk about this because there can be some confusion on how to make payments to employees that may be doing activities that are outside of their normal duties. And oftentimes we see payments go through accounts payable through a VDR form. We don't want to see that because the rule of thumb is if an individual is employed by CSU East Bay, 99% of the time they cannot be paid through accounts payable. The rule of thumb is that if they're employed, any additional payments will be issued by payroll. So what are those options to pay employees? Well, for the purpose of today, there are 3 options that I'll talk about. The honorarium. This is a one-time payment for presenting a lecture, a class, participating in a certain event or activity. There's also a special consultant. Although this is becoming less common nowadays, you may get approval to pay an employee as a special consultant or work on a project. Typically, this is not a daily activity. It could be a day or 2 per week or so, or maybe a week at a time per month. And then lastly, we have a you can hire on a temporary basis. In this payment option or appointment type, you may have some ongoing work for a specific duration. You may be hiring in a salary capacity or maybe as an hourly appointment as well, but it cannot exceed 100%, 125% of this employee's FTE. Next slide. Now, Cal Employee Connect. So this is a secure web-based self-service portal available to all California state employees. This was born out of the pandemic. It's one of the good things that has come out of COVID or the pandemic for the state of California. Prior to the pandemic, the state of California was spending a lot of dollars on printing direct deposit advices. And they took this opportunity to launch this portal where employees will now be able to access their earnings statements. So that's how this came about with the pandemic and cutting costs with printing of the direct deposit advices. So the registration process is pretty straightforward. It's pretty easy. All you need is your agency code for East Bay, which is 229. And then if you don't have an actual direct deposit statement, you can go to MyHR and pick up the check number from MyHR and use that to enroll in Cal Employee Connect with some other personal information that you will be asked in order to authenticate yourself. Then once you're registered, you can access your earning statements, W-2s for the last 4 years. And now the most recent feature is enrolling in direct deposit and making account changes to your direct deposit account. So it's a neat feature. There's more self-service features that the state of California plans to introduce as we kind of build on this platform. So more to come with Cal Employee Connect, but for now, it's a great tool to access your statements. We get questions a lot about MyHR's paycheck view, where it does not provide employees year to date. And when employees are trying to do a refi or apply for a loan, that's required. And most times you can't use MyHR data for that. So, Cal Employee Connect is your official earnings statements for that, and we'll be able to provide that type of source document in order to apply for loans and refinance home loans as well. And with that, Maurice, I give it back to you.
Thank you, Tony. If you haven't already done so, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat, and Donna will start with the questions that have already been submitted.
Okay, thanks, Faris. First question, what are the job classifications based on again?
So job classifications are based on the duties. A student assistant, which it's our 1870 classification, is for general office work. Then we have our instructional student assistants. Those are students that are mostly in the classroom or engaged in academic departments doing tutoring, grading, or providing instruction. And then Sonia talked about work study. So there's a work study classification as well. So everything specific to the duties or the funding.
Oh, okay. Next question. What student assistant positions require a background check or live scan?
You want me to take that, Tony?
Andre? Yes, sir.
So student assistants that are working in areas whereby they're sensitive in nature. So if you have any student assistants that are going to be working with minors, they're required to do live scans. Most student assistants don't have to go through that process, but if they're going to be working in positions dealing with minors or something like that, they will be required to go through the process.
Okay. So LAEP and Federal Work Study are different funding sources. Are they different classifications as well, or are they the same?
they are different classifications.
Okay.
And we recently implemented, it's in January of this year, although these classifications were available last summer, our campus implemented the new classifications for LAEP this January, which was the first time we actually hired students to perform those duties in that class. And those classes are viewable on the CEIF as well. There's a drop down and there's descriptions for each classification when you download the CEIF and complete the form.
Okay. Next question. I've seen that the CSU EU is trying to organize student assistance. If that happens, would it change the hiring process?
So
Most likely.
if that happens, it's going to change a lot on campus. We don't know exactly what all is going to change, but there'll be a lot of things. For instance, they may become eligible for benefits, permanency, a ton of different things. And so that's closely being watched, and we'll know and we'll put that information out as soon as it's available to us. I don't see it happening immediately, but it's something that definitely may happen with the campus. And if so, we'll find out when it's going to be rolled out and everything that they're eligible for, hours, maximum, and all of that. So it could definitely and more likely will change things in terms of hiring if that rolls out.
Oh, okay. Okay, next question. Where are the effective dates and end dates for fall through spring and summer bridge located?
For the 22-23 academic year, just go to our payroll website. We have an academic calendar and a payroll calendar. The payroll calendar has both our staff effective dates, begin and end dates, as well as our academic begin and end dates. The 23-24 calendar is being worked on and finalized. As soon as that's available, we'll publish that and post it on our website as well.
Okay. Actually, the next is a comment. It's along with the CEAF to end an appointment, an employee separation clearance process should also be submitted for students. And a link is provided for that.
And I'll chime in on that. That is correct. For all employees, students, or staff, when they are separating, clearance form should be submitted for everyone as a result of an audit. And it's part of the whole audit process for the university that everyone should go through a clearance process.
Okay. Okay,
So we
next.
expect 1,500 of those to come in June.
Right.
Okay, next question. Can you confirm that students can work up to 40 hours on bridge in summer?
That is correct. Students can work up to 40 hours per week school is not in session, during recess and breaks, and during their bridge appointment as well.
Okay, next question. What happens when a student consistently does not follow these rules?
Well, there should be a conversation with that student. The rules are the rules.
Mm-hmm.
If you have students that are not following the rules, this question is in regards to work hours. Do not schedule your students beyond 20 hours a week while school in session. I mean, that's easy. You don't do that. Now, if it's disciplinary, then we have a different issue. But work hours, I mean, that's incumbent on us. We hire students in payroll and HR. We don't schedule them beyond 20 hours a week. So, there's shared responsibility. So if it's related to work hours, I think we have control over that.
But also the managers specifically have control in regards to scheduling and making sure their students are adhering to those schedules and not letting them work anything beyond that. So managers have to manage.
Okay, next question. Do students have a clock in, clock out system on MySU East Bay? Will we be able to see that logged information?
Yes, students, it's not a clock system, but it's a timesheet where students do report their start and end times. And it's based, and the view for this is there's a timekeeper role. If you don't have the timekeeper role and you have students that you supervise, then you might want to look into getting access to their timesheets. But some of these questions that I see popping up might be worthwhile taking them offline. But yes, you can see your students' timesheets online.
Okay. Next question. After CEIFs are submitted, what do students have to do on their end?
So the CEIF first goes to payroll, then the student needs to visit HR and payroll to complete their onboarding responsibilities. Once that's all done, the payroll techs will match the CEIF with the onboarding documentation. And at that point, once they're hired, a student will have a link that links them to their timesheet, and that's through their MyCSUB portal. So once they're hired, everything's gone through, they'll have access to their timesheet to start entering and reporting their time.
Okay. Next question. Direct deposit has been down for maintenance in the last 2 months. Do you know when it will be active?
I don't know that it's been 2 months. I do know that this week that the state controller's office took it down for a day, and then that got pushed back for another day. As of yesterday, it's back up.
Okay.
Thank you, Jessica.
Okay, next question. If an employee is receiving an honorarium from another campus or is receiving payment for services rendered at another campus, which campus payroll department will be processing the payment to the employee?
So good question. Many campuses do it differently. As you know, we are the CSU. Oftentimes, the other campuses will make the payment, or the other campuses will ask the home campus to issue the payment and then get reimbursed. So it just depends on the communication and how the agreement was set up.
Yeah, I did like to pipe in. My understanding is the home campus pays the employee. So, and then the campus who paid out is reimbursed through an IFT. So
Yeah, you're correct, Donna. And I'm thinking also in terms of additional appointments with faculty. We have faculty that may teach at our
Right.
campus, and then another campus which is totally separate, but definitely, that's also correct in terms of what you mentioned.
okay. Next question, and this is a LifeScan follow-up. What about students who might be in a lab that uses controlled substances?
I would advise that those students be live scanned as well, because you may have a student that may have had a substance abuse problem at one point. And if they've been arrested or anything like that, that would pop up, and we would know that, and to be able to look at that to determine if that student should be hired in that position or not. So if they're going to be dealing with something like that, I would definitely advise that they're live scanned.
Okay, and then the next question, well, next is like a statement. It looks like a follow-up to the students who don't comply. And it says, it's my understanding this student is a research student and they have not listed breaks and have gone over 8 hours. I don't control the schedule. So there's that. And then the next question is regarding student clearance. Is this done at the end of the academic year or each semester?
The clearance form should be completed upon the final day of when the employee is going to end. So if it's going to be at the end of the semester, that's when the form should be done.
Excuse me, Donna, before we go to the next question, I am so excited that everyone has so many questions for payroll and HR. However, we are not done with the agenda as of yet. So Tony and Andre, if you don't mind, we will email you the rest of the questions. And once we get the answers, we can somehow get them posted on our FYI webpage, or if someone didn't get their question answered, perhaps you can email Tony and or Andre offline. Okay,
That works.
sorry, but thanks. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
guys. Thank you. Our next topic will be fiscal year end reminders and information from the Procurement Director, Cy Vang, and the Controller, Rabi Joseph. Cy and Rabi.
Thank you, Maurice, for that introduction. Once again, my name is Cy Vang. I am the Director of Procurement. My colleague Joseph, Rabi, and I will be sharing some important information, reminders, and deadlines to assist with the closing of the 22-23 fiscal year. We are in April, but June 30th is right around the corner. As Maureen mentioned in her opening remarks earlier this morning, year-end closing is a campus-wide effort, so we need your support and cooperation. The following few slides will cover year-end activities relating to procurement services. Your undivided attention is appreciated as there will be some pop quizzes at the end of each of our presentations. Next slide. As a standard practice, departments should be conducting year-round reviews of your open purchase orders to make sure that you can confirm your purchase orders are still needed, as well as transactions are accurately charged to the correct chart fill strings. The recommendation is to perform these reviews on a monthly basis and more frequently as the year-end approaches. As you review your open purchase orders, it is recommended that you close purchase orders which are no longer needed. Perhaps there was a long lead time for supplies which were never delivered, or there were services that you needed, but that change of scope has changed and then that service is no longer needed. For whatever the reason may be, the purchase order is determined to be no longer needed, and the proper course of action is to close that purchase order. So why should you perform these year-round activities? Firstly, it provides departments you a real-time report that accurately reflects what your budget balances are for planning purchases for the rest of the year end and for the throughout the fiscal year as well too. In the CFS system, there is a open purchase order report in the data warehouse. So any end users that have access can pull that report based off of your chart fill accounts. If you have any questions or need assistance, please reach out to procurement and we can help you demonstrate how you can pull that report. Secondly, closing a purchase order releases an encumbrance, which is funds that were committed for that specific purchase order. So once you close that purchase order, those funds can now be used for a new purchase. Next slide. To initiate the open purchase order closure, please email the PO numbers in numerical order to the lead buyer, Chris Lam-Visquez. A purchase order closure is final, so it cannot be reversed. So make sure that there are no pending invoices to be paid against that purchase order. And in some situations, you may need to review the contract terms with one of the buyers to ensure that early closure is allowable. Pending invoices. Another important practice is to assist accounts payable with identifying pending invoices for payment issuance. In some situations, you may need to help follow up with the vendors. This ensures that invoices are paid to the correct fiscal year in which the goods are received and the services are rendered. Next slide. The important deadline to save on your calendar right now is June 5th. This is the deadline to submit any requisitions for this fiscal year. The requisitions must be submitted and approved by this deadline to allow sufficient time for processing before the year end. The processing time varies depending on the complexity and the scope of the requisition. For example, requisitions exceeding the $50,000 threshold may require some lengthy bidding procedures. So please take processing times into consideration as you plan out your year-end purchases and consult with one of the procurement buyers for a more accurate timeline. Any requisitions that are submitted after the June 5th deadline may be coded to the next fiscal year. And in limited situations on a case-by-case situation, emergency exceptions may be granted. So please save this June 5th deadline on your calendar. Next slide. Here's pop quiz trivia time. And so please put in the chat box your response to this first question. What is a benefit of closing a purchase order? Any response? All right.
Frees up the money.
Got some answers. Thank you so much. Yes. So it frees up the encumbrances that were charged against or encumbered against that purchase order, releases it so you could buy new things. Next question. In what fiscal year may purchasing recognize requisitions received after June 5th, 2023? I see responses. Correct answers, yes. The answer is the next fiscal year, 23-24. Please make sure you save that June 5th deadline on your calendar and submit those requisitions before that deadline. Otherwise, requisitions received after June 5th will be coded to the new fiscal year. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Rabi Joseph.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rabi Joseph, University Controller. I lead the General Accounting and Accounts Payable teams for Cal State East Bay. So let's go through a few year-end process guidelines. Before we start, I'd like to mention that the legal closing for State Controller's Office financials are due in July. And since it's due in mid-July, the Chancellor's Office wanted us to send our legal financial statements to Chancellor's Office by July, between July 10th and 11th. So having said that, so we have only few weekdays to finalize our financials for legal close in July. And remember, July 4th is a holiday too. It's on a Tuesday. So the accounting teams have a very little window to close the books and send it to the Chancellor's Office by July 7th. So because of that, we like to remind the departments, just not only accounting team, that we need to look at our department budgets and department actuals and make sure we are constantly reviewing them as time goes by every month. So at the year end come, it's a smooth process. So we like to have departments review and reconcile throughout the year, check their balances, transactions in their departments at least monthly, and more frequently as year-end approaches, see if there's any errors or any accidental charges that not belongs to their department, so they can be corrected before the year-end rolls. Next slide, please. So what are we reviewing year-on transaction balance reviews? So we are reviewing for the requisitions. As my colleague Sai said, the requisition timeline deadline for this fiscal year end is June 5th. So make sure, if we have any requisitions that need to get into the purchase order before fiscal year, you had to process them before June 5th. Don't wait till June and think that the purchase order is going to be processed before June 30th for the fiscal year end, because there's a lot of work to be done in June in order to close the books in the first week of July. Same thing with encumbrances. If we have unused purchase orders and you think that won't be used and can be closed, work with the size team to close them out. Accounts payable. If you have invoices that you receive from the vendors for purchase orders for this year, so we can process them and close out, please make sure accounts payable receive them in a timely fashion. Fund and DEP ID balances. So let's make sure, we look at the fund and our department IDs, make sure our balances are in sync, we are not overspend budgets in any of the departments. If you have any accounts receivable or billing request for flows team, make sure, we give them in time so they can bill the other departments or outside entities for accounts receivable. Transfers, same way, if you have budget transfers or expense transfers or payroll transfers from department to department, submit them as soon as possible and don't wait till June to do that. Same with any federal work study allocations. Next slide, please. So I want to emphasize on the chart field string. So usually there are 6 elements of chart field value, and we have to make sure we are correctly coding at the transaction level. Next slide, please. So in a chart field string, there are 6 elements, and the first 3 elements, the fund, account, and DEP ID, are required fields. That's how we capture a transaction. And program, class, and projects are for tracking. If we have a project, for example, if you have a construction project, we want to track, if it's $25 million budget, how much we have spent over last 2 years, we can track through project. But it's not a required field. It's for the department who is tracking. Same with program and class. If you are tracking a program, you can start a program code, so you can track it over the years. But when it comes to fund, account, and DEP ID, those are the 3 most important fields. Fund is where are we getting the money to spend? The account is what are we spending for? And the DEP ID is who is spending. So I give an example for my department. So hope all of you know what your DEP ID is. My department ID is General Accounting is 13753. So that's my department. And if I'm buying some supplies, the supply account number is 660003. And if I'm spending from General Accounting, General Operating Fund for East Bay, that's EB001. So there are so many different funds and accounts and DEP IDs, but at least you should know your DEP ID, so the expense will get into the proper department. Next slide, please. The other one is the procurement card, or we call it a P card. P card transactions posted to your bank statement by May 15th will be posted in current fiscal year. So every month when we spend using a P card for small expenses for less than $5,000 and small expenses that we don't go through purchase order, supplies or other services we buy, will come in as a statement every month end, and employees are supposed to check them, and the departments are supposed to check them and give their correct chart field string, make sure it's coded into the right department and right fund. And the May 18th statement that you received, that will be reconciled and submitting back to the university accounts payable group will be the last statement that the transaction will get in for this fiscal year. After May 18th, the next statement will be sometime middle of June. That statement will be too late to be coded into this fiscal year. So make sure anything you want to spend within this fiscal year, it has to be spent before the May 18th statement to be included into this fiscal year. Next slide, please. Certify. Most of you know what Certify is. That's a travel and employee reimbursement system. It was implemented a few years ago, but due to COVID, a lot of employees did not travel the last few years. But we see a lot of employees using the Certify travel and employee reimbursement system this year. As part of the Certify, there's a prepaid portion. So if you have air travel and rental car through enterprise, they can be prepaid using the Unicity corporate card. So, and when you submit your expense report, say you bought a ticket in January for travel in March. So when you submit your claim after your completion of your travel in March, you submit an expense report in March or April within 30 days of completion of your trip. Make sure you clear all that company paid prepaid expenses, so that way it'll be all entered into your department and expense through. AP will process all submitted claims that are received by May 29th in Certify in the current fiscal year as time permit. As you know, a lot of travels are happening, so accounts payable department has to make sure all the claims in Certified has to be pushed through. So if you wait till in June and expenses are coming through in June, they may not be pushed through, going through a review process and pushed through to the accounts payable through the department expenses in June. So let's make sure you have any claims outstanding there, submit them by end of May. Next slide, please. Again, for guaranteed processing, submit final non-payroll expenditure transfers, budget transfers, or payroll adjustment request by cutoff dates. This will allow for normal processing times and inclusion within the current fiscal year. Items received after the due dates will be processed as time permits. So I urge you to process everything by end of May. Don't wait till June to submit your expenses, because the accounting team has only 1 week window in July, first week, to close the books. Next slide, please. Just another reminder, the cashier's office will close at 1 p.m. on Friday on June 30th. The year-end close work continues behind the scenes. Probably accounting teams will end up working for July 4th. We don't want them working on July 4th to get the financials ready to send it to the Chancellor's office by July 7th. So we will have a lot of questions. There are always some questions at the last minute to close the books. So please make sure you are available, or somebody in your department are available to answer any last minute questions for us, so we can ensure we close the books by July 7th. Next slide, please. So with that said, we have few questions. See how much attention you are paying. So question number 1. By what process will accounting recognize unclaimed expenses for the current fiscal year? I'll give a minute for you to answer. Okay, next slide, please. So the answer is accrual. Again, because of the small window of the close within July 7th, most of the expenses that get to June, will not be able to accrue through the system. So make sure you submit all the expenses, everything before May 29th to get into this fiscal year. Next question, please. So procurement card statement dated June 23, 2023 will be included in current fiscal year 22-23. Is that a true or a false statement? Several of you got the answer correct. Next slide, please. So the answer is false. Okay. Next question. So when is the deadline to submit budget, payroll, and expense transfers? And the answer is June 5th, 2023, and several of you got that correct too. So that's pretty much ends my presentation, and let's open up for any questions. So if you have questions in the chat, we can go ahead and answer.
Okay, we have some questions in the chat. The first one is, what is the step-by-step process for closing the PO?
So the process is to review which purchase orders you want to close. You can do that pulling the open purchase report in the CFS data warehouse. Send a listing of those POs in numerical order and email them to Chris at InvestQuest, and she will process those POs for closure.
Okay, next question. When a PO is coded as complete, does that mean the PO is closed, or do we need to contact Chris?
I think Chris is on this call, so I'm going to defer to her. Chris?
Oh, good morning, everybody. When a status indicate when a PO status, let's just be really clear. When a PO status says complete, that means the PO is closed, because we would have already went through the PO closing process and everything, the budget checking, and so the status will then be switched to complete. So that is completely closed. You should not be seeing that open order when you run your open order report. You should not see those PO on your open orders. And the reason why we need to close it at the PO in procurement is because you guys do not have access to do so with your logins. So that's the reason why we ask for it to be sent to us.
Okay, next question. How do you split the fund in a requisition? I didn't see a drop-down option to add multiple fund codes if two club accounts are splitting the cost. Or could this be added in the invoice payment process?
So you want me to take that?
Go ahead.
Okay, so this process is specified in our user's guide. It's not something I could just kind of talk to you, give you instruction right now, but it is, please review to the, I think it's the requisition user's guide. And if you need us to walk you through it, I'll be happy to do it. Just give me a call, but there's a way to do it, and it's pretty simple, but it's a process. So refer to the user's guide and then call if you need clarification. Once you review the user's guide, we'll be happy to do it.
Yeah, I saw the short answer is yes, you can split it, each requisition line by percentage or by dollar amount.
And you can have as many account string for that one line as you want. You just need to specify it in there.
Okay, next question. Do ASCs process certify?
Lana, can I?
Hi. Oh, yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that, but I'm just not really clear on the acronyms, but basically for certify, that is the employee travel and reimbursement portal. So if you are an employee, you should be able to submit those reimbursements in certify. And I just want to apologize. My name is coming up as Alondra Marquez. I just got a new camera. I'm not sure why it's registered under her name, but Alondra is one of the AP staff members, but I am Lana Lewis. So just for FYI.
Okay. Next question. What is the standard processing time for certified claims? I submitted a claim 3 weeks ago.
Okay, so unfortunately, right, due to higher volume of travel and AP invoices, because it is our fiscal year end, it nearly doubles for us. It is taking a little longer, but if you do not receive or hear from any of the AP techs within a 3-week period, please feel free to email me and I will go ahead and look into it and try to get it pushed along quicker.
Okay, next question. Can a department sign approval to lock in a date with a vendor, but not a contract? I understand we cannot sign a contract. Is this considered the same?
Renee, I don't quite understand your questions. Perhaps I can reach out to you and address it offline, just so I can get some clarification.
Okay, and then Aaron Balatayo shared the procurement purchasing requisition guide link for those of you who are interested. And Tiffany would like to clarify, do the admins handle certify for other staff and faculty?
I'll take that question. I'll take the question. Yes, sometimes departments may have their admins handle their certified through a delegation process, but all employees have or should have access to certify to handle their own reimbursements for travel and employee expenses.
Okay. No, I don't see any further questions in the chat. If you have any, please enter them in the chat, or if you prefer, unmute yourself and just ask.
I do want to add something to Rabi's and Sai's presentation for fiscal year end. Great job. But I also want to let the campus know your activities occur throughout the year. It's not just happening at the last few months of the year. So that's why we emphasize reconciliations, your reviews. They should be happening all throughout the year, as we want to capture those activities as they occur. So again, these deadlines are to help with the year-end close. But, again, we want to emphasize year-round reviews, year-round activities, and not an emphasis on a flurry of activity at the end of the year.
Thank you, Sai. Thank you, Rabi. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Alondra. Sorry, I mean Lana. Just kidding. Our final topic for the day is going to come from our Associate Director of Cashiers and Student Finance, Aaron, on Student Dynamic Bill. Aaron?
All right, thank you, Maurice. Good afternoon. No, sorry, not good afternoon yet. Wishful thinking. Still good morning. In case you guys don't know me, my name is Aaron Ledesma. I'm the Associate Director here at East Bay of Student Financial Services. So very exciting thing we just implemented and went live into production On April 6th, so a couple weeks ago, is a product called Student Dynamic Bill. So you may ask, what is Student Dynamic Bill? So go ahead and put the next slide, Jonathan, please. Thanks. So we were getting feedback from the campus community, students and others about students when they log into our online payment portal, right? When they go in to make a payment online, they log into our web payment portal. And the only thing that really is popping up in the web payment portal is the balance that they owe, just a number. If they wanted more information about that balance, they weren't able to find more information within our payment portal. They could always look in their MyCSUEB account and get that information, but within the online payment portal, there wasn't more that they can really see besides just a number that they owed. So what the dynamic bill, excuse me, student dynamic bill does is give them the option of finding out more information about their balance while they're still in the payment portal. So again, if you can see on the slide here, a few things that it does. A student would be able to see a summary view of their outstanding balance by term, detailed view of their outstanding balance by charge type, such as if they owe tuition or housing or a miscellaneous fee or payment plan fee. They'll be able to get that information now. They'll also be able to see the due dates of their charges. And also, if they're a financial aid student, and let's say they are expecting some anticipated aid, right, for the upcoming term, they'll also be able to see the amount of that anticipated financial aid within their dynamic bill. Okay, so yeah, so good things, you know, they can now see a lot more information than in the past. So let's go on to the next slide, please. So how do students get there? How do they get to this dynamic bill? So again, like I mentioned, it's within the online payment portal. So step one is you have to go into the online payment portal. So they go to the, you know, the link, they type in their net ID and their password, and they click sign in. And then on the next screen, this is what they see. So this is like the home kind of page of the online payment portal. And oops, I messed up my view. Here we go. So if you notice, right there's just a dollar amount, right? So this student, for example, owes us quite a bit of money. But again, in the past, all that they would be able to see is just that number, and that's it. There would be nowhere for them to click on to find out, okay, is this tuition? Is it tuition and housing? Is it miscellaneous? What is it? So what Dynamic Bill does is give them the chance to get more information. They can get to their Dynamic Bill two different ways, by clicking on the words View Activity Details, which you see underneath that dollar amount there with the right-hand red arrow. Or if they choose, they can go way on the left-hand side and click on Activity Details, as pointed out by the red arrow on the left-hand side. Once clicked on, they will see the following on their screen. Next slide. Thank you. This is what will pop up. So this is their Dynamic Bill. It's pretty simple. We didn't, make it all too fancy with bright colors or anything like that. Very straightforward. Just just lines, right? No fancy gifts or nothing like that. So if you notice on the top, let's see, let me move this out of the way so I can see, is the balance summary section. So as I mentioned before, the top part is a summary. It breaks down their balance by the term that they owe it. So in this student's, this example, the student's balance is over 16 grand. It's actually spread out over 4 different terms. So that's a little quick summary view, right? How much is owed for this term, how much is owed from that term, so on and so forth. They look down a little bit, you'll see the balance details section. So the details section gives a little more detail, right? So in the spring 2022, the balance is 60, it's really small, 68, 66, something like that. But you can see that that balance is miscellaneous charges, right? It's not tuition related or housing related. It's miscellaneous charge related. If we go, let's jump to fall 2022. You can see their balance is made up of two different types of charges, right? Tuition and registration fees, and then also housing. So again, there are even a further layer of details that are available to students if they wanted to know, like for miscellaneous charges, right? That's still, it's detailed, but it's a higher level of detail. Miscellaneous could be a graduation filing fee, late fees. We didn't want to add, tons of rows of information on this. We want it to be phone friendly. We wanted it to be so that they don't have to scroll and use their thumbs too much. Again, this is more like a snapshot of what is available in our main system that we use for record keeping, which is PeopleSoft, right? They're My CSU EB. So this isn't meant to replace that. We still want students to be familiar with their My CSU EB account and go into see details. Again, this is more just like a quick, okay, let me go check this out real quick. All right. I remember I owe tuition. Okay. And then they go back and make their payment. So that's the details section. And then at the very bottom, it lists the due dates of all the outstanding charges. If the due date of that charge or charges happen to be past due, you'll see the words past due in red on the left-hand side. If the due date of the charge or charges are in the future, the words past due will not be present. They'll just say the due date in the middle of their page and the amount of that chart. So again, we try to make it simple, right? Students see this, said, oh, well, maybe I should pay attention to something that's past due, make it in red. So that it brings their attention to it a little bit. And again, now they know, they log into this. Oh, okay, I see that first screen, right? Again, didn't tell me the due date. They come in here. Oh, yeah, I owe $3,500, but it's not due till May 31st. All right, I got some time. So it just, again, we're doing this to try to lessen the confusion, lessen the frustration about seeing financial information. Another big thing, I'm sorry, I almost passed it up. If you notice, there's the anticipated aid line on the spring 2023. So if this student, unfortunately, I couldn't pick one that had anticipated aid to show you, but let's say the student was getting anticipated financial aid, a number would be present there. And then that remaining term balance owed number is a formula, right? So it would subtract the anticipated aid amount from their charges. So if their total charges, tuition and housing, were $10,000 and the anticipated aid was $5,000, the remaining term balance owed number would say $5,000. So again, our hope is that the students don't pay more than what they need to pay out of pocket, right? A lot of students, they get financial aid and they still end up paying us all their tuition fees in full. And so then they have to wait for the refund to get sent to them, right? So we're hoping they come here, they see, okay, my tuition is $3,500, my anticipated aid is $1,500. All right, so I just got to pay $2,000 out of pocket, right? So hopefully this helps them having to overpay. That way they get to keep their money in their pockets and buy, gallon of milk for $10, or hopefully it's not that much, but, but you know what I mean. What else? The very bottom, you'll see a little blurb information as of such and such date and is subject to change. So it's almost real time. I mean, it's within a few minutes. So it's basically real time. So if a student comes in here, they make a payment, they go back into here, all the numbers will be updated. Other way to look at it, if they come in here today, they enroll in classes tonight, which maybe increases their fees. They come back in there tomorrow, the new charges will be on their dynamic bill. We do still like to say that it is as of this certain date, just to let them know that it's like tomorrow, it could change, right? So just remind them it's as of this date, but it is a real time. All right, so go ahead, next slide, Jonathan, please. All right, so where to send students if they have questions or if they want information about Student Dynamic Build. So from our main site, we have a dedicated page for Student Dynamic Build. It lists what it does on the very top. And then if they scroll down on that web page, it gives them a couple tutorials on how to get there and how to navigate it, right? So the first tutorial that you can see on the screen is the video that we created on our YouTube channel. If they were to scroll down on that page, they would also see PDFs and how-to guide in words and pictures. And then the bottom of our webpage shows example, like you just saw, an example of the dynamic build, and it details, it gives information about what they're looking at. So we do have a dedicated webpage on Student Dynamic Build. We put out flyers throughout the campus at the unions, the EIC, couple of different colleges, the rec center, housing, all over the campus, advertising this new feature with QR codes on them. So students can just scan it with their phones. Now everything's phone, right? Scan the QR code, it takes them directly to this site. We've gotten a few emails already with students taking screenshots of the dynamic build, asking some questions, which is great. So that means maybe they saw a flyer. There was a slide on the billboard too, the electronic billboard. So some students are already aware of that. I've given presentations about this on different forums, the ASI forum, some faculty advising, counseling forums. So it's simply out there. It's posted on My Compass, Blackboard, Canvas. Yeah, it's out there pretty good. So we're hoping students use it. But if they still have questions, go ahead, next slide, Jonathan. Definitely, read, if they come to you and they have a question about it, you can give them to us, Student Financial Services, email studentfinance@csueastbay.edu. That's our number. They can scan the QR code and be taken to that website, the web page, the Dynamic Build webpage. Yeah, we can definitely help them out, help them figure out what they're looking at. And again, yeah, hopefully this helps eliminate some confusion and just gives them a little more access to information about their bill. And that is it. I didn't have a question slide, sorry about that. But if anyone has questions, feel free to ask at this time.
Thank you very much, Aaron, for that dynamic information.
All right.
If anyone has any questions for Aaron, you can type them in the chat at this time.
All right.
Okay, hearing and seeing none. That does conclude our topics for today. I have enjoyed being your host. I want to remind everyone again that we will be sending out a survey in the coming days. And if you can please take the time to complete that survey, we would appreciate the feedback. Thank you. Bye.